Alright, quickly before we get into the topic of the video, I just want to say something really quick. I think I've established that I'm a huge fan of Souls games on this channel. I feel like I've talked about them a lot. First, Berserker Kazan. I just started playing it. Oh my gosh, if you're a fan of Souls games, you have to try this game. Holy cow, it is so good. I am loving it. It is eating up my life. But enough about that. Hey everyone, today I am back again to talk about an anime that came out this season. Probably the most recommended anime by my viewers to check out that has come out this season. I had absolutely zero interest in checking out this show. I watched it solely due to viewer recommendations. That is the only reason I even bothered looking at this show, and I'm pretty glad that I did. And the show I'm gonna be talking about is A Wild Last Boss Appeared. Yes, this show, I heard a few things about it, and the main one that I heard everyone saying, a lot of people online were saying this, even my brother Giguk mentioned this anime in his fall 2025 video, and he, along with everyone else, has been saying that this anime is basically Overlord, but Ainz is a waifu instead of a skeleton. And so, of course, this begs the age-old question, would I still love Overlord if Ainz wasn't the bone daddy that we know and love and instead was an anime waifu? And the answer is... Okay, so let's go into a quick plot synopsis here of A Wild Last Boss Appeared. So in the world of this anime, there is an MMORPG that exists called X-Gate Online. And this game was entirely taken over by the player of the avatar Lufus Mafal. And the way this game works is it has a war and conquest function to it, but it also has this other thing where it basically writes the lore of the world based on the actions of the players in it. So this player who controls Lufus basically takes over the entire world of the game and becomes somewhat of an unofficial final boss and becomes more interesting. The players are more interested in taking down Lufus than they are in taking down the actual story final boss, the Demon King. And the player actually gets a little bored with the game because it's not really fun to just conquer an entire game and, you know, there's nothing happening. So he orchestrates this event with other players for them to kind of unite and take down Lufus as part of like their own created lore that they did. Like they all agreed we should do this to make the game more fun. And so the anime starts off with this huge battle where Lufus is defeated, and the player was just like, you know what, that's a satisfying end to this little story. Then he is prompted by the in-game goddess of the world of X-Gate Online, but after accepting this prompt, he is randomly isekai'd into the world of X-Gate Online as his avatar, Lufus Mafal. And I have to say, I thought it was hilarious the very realistic reaction a man would have to suddenly becoming a woman character. The first thing he does is literally reach down to his crotch and is just like, what? It's not there anymore. Which I feel like most men would have that reaction. You know, something that's been there our entire lives is suddenly not there anymore. I would certainly be wondering what's going on. So yes, just like Overlord, he is isekai'd into the body of his game avatar, and like I said, he's isekai'd into the world of X-Gate Online, but it's hundreds of years in the future of when he was playing the game. So it's been like a few hundred years since Lufus has been defeated in the world's timeline. And the story basically follows Lufus as she's going around the world of X-Gate and gathering her old subordinates. That seems to be the main plot focus as of now. I'm only 6 episodes in, but that's been the main plot focus. She had 12 servants called the 12 Heavenly Stars, and since her defeat in the lore, they've all been scattered, and so now she's going around and trying to find them with the help of her assistant Dina. And that's the basic premise here. So let me get right into this major thing that I feel like a lot of people recommended the show to me, because everyone is calling this female Overlord. Everyone's calling it waifu Overlord, stuff like that. I could see why a comparison like that would come up. However, calling this like a carbon copy of Overlord, but it has a girl as the main protagonist, that's disingenuous. I view this show as a lot different from Overlord in many ways. While this show does have a lot of similarities to Overlord, you know, it's a super powerful person that's teleported into their game avatar. They have a lot of powerful servants, and they're kind of like this world master, you know, and ruler type character. That's pretty much where the similarities to Overlord end. Number one is that in this show, Lufus is teleported into the world of her game. Granted, it's a few hundred years past where she was before when she was actually playing the game, But in Overlord, Ainz isn't teleported into Yggdrasil. He's teleported to an entirely new, unique world outside the bounds of the game. The new world has nothing to do with Yggdrasil at all. Also, the world of X-Gate is still very gamic. They pull up status screens and they can check their HP and MP and, you know, offense numbers. Like, those numbers still exist. Whereas in Overlord, it's all organic. You know, Maruyama does do those little sheets at the end where he quantifies like the organic things as like numbers, but you can't pull up a status screen in the new world and look at someone's stats in Overlord because it's a real world. It's not a game anymore. Whereas the world in A Wild Last Boss Appeared is still very, very gamic. Number two, I think, is the plot just feels entirely different. In Overlord, it follows him as he's trying to go on this quest to conquer the world. In A Wild Last Boss Appeared, the main protagonist already conquered the world. The conquering already occurred. In A Wild Last Boss Appeared. And so the vibes of these two shows are entirely different because it's just an entirely different goal happening. And another thing is that the mentalities of our two protagonists are entirely different. I don't even know why they're trying to cast Lufus as kind of like trying to be evil or something, or like they're trying to make her seem like she could have been evil or something. She's not evil at all. Even though she was kind of viewed as like this world conquering overlord and everything, a lot of people that live now 200 years later are saying that that time was looked as like a golden age because Lufus was a good ruler and benevolent and, you know, overthrew tyrants and everything like that. Whereas in Overlord, Ainz is actively performing malicious acts. Like, he is party to and commits them himself, like horrific atrocities against other countries. He is deliberately, you know, spreading fear and allowing evil acts to happen under his watch, which never occurs in Lufus's mind. So our two protagonists here are totally different in terms of mindset. So while on paper these two stories do seem kind of similar, as a person that's covered Overlord for literally years at this point and has spent a long time diving into the lore of the world and characters and how complex the story actually is, to me the divide between these two shows is very apparent. Despite the seemingly numerous similarities they do have. Once you dive a little bit deeper, the changes there become more obvious. And unfortunately for A Wild Last Boss Appeared, I view a lot of the changes that they made as inferior to the ones that exist in Overlord comparatively. One of my favorite things about Overlord is the fact that the new world is not gamic. You cannot be looking at a status screen on someone in Overlord. It is not a game. Maruyama spends a lot of time in Overlord deliberately showing that actions have consequences, rippling consequences, all the way down to just your every average Joe. It is alive, it breathes, things happen, there's cultural changes, things like that. Making the world organic is one of my favorite things about Overlord, whereas in this, you know, A Wild Last Boss Appeared, everyone's still looking at screens and, you know, status screens are coming up everywhere, numbers, bid-bid-bop, you know, I find that to be less interesting than the very organic world of Overlord. I also have to say that the plot of finding her subordinates that have been scattered over 200 years is just a less interesting plot hook than I'm gonna take over the world. You know, obviously that just sounds more interesting to me on paper, and I just think the baseline story of Overlord is a little bit more intriguing. Now, all of that being said, there is still a lot to enjoy in this show. So first thing, let me talk about some of the story elements that I like. There definitely seems to be a lot more going on like in the deeper aspects of this show than like they're actually exploring right now. One of the things is that the mentality and the memories that the guy who was playing Lufus has as her time in the game seems to conflict with some of the memories that exist within the body, I guess, of the Lufus that he now inhabits, which I think is interesting, and it also shows us that there could be things that happened that are unknown to the main character that are things we can learn about. Secondly, there's a couple of questions here that haven't been answered that I am interested in. Number one is, what was the whole deal with the goddess of this game kind of summoning him? Why did that happen? They made it very clear it was the goddess of this game that pulled him in. Why did she do that? What's going on with that? And number two is Dina, Lufus's assistant character. Something funky is up with her. That is is my thought on her. She's presented as, oh, it was a background character, but she seems way too knowledgeable about everything that's happening. Constantly, like, sometimes switches to like this super serious mode and then goes back to being the comic relief character and like, oh, I'm forgettable, like, oh, no one knows who I am, yada yada yada. But something seems up with Dina, and that has not been explored yet. That is just, there's more to that character, I feel, than has been presented so far. There's also this other plot aspect of the fact that of the 7 heroes who defeated Luffy, 3 of them were long-lived races, so 3 of them still live in the timeline 200 years later. So now Luffy is interested, like, oh, I have to find these 3 people. Maybe these are people that were in my situation, or maybe they can, reveal some things about what happened to me. So there are plot hooks that exist in this anime, and there are lore things too. And as a lore head, I basically made an entire channel out of being a lore head. Of course, I'm always interested in stuff like that. Whenever there's something deeper to dive into, I'm there for that, and that does exist. It seems to exist in this show. Another thing I want to say is that overall, this show is pretty well animated. There are a few scenes where it dips pretty dramatically, but there's a lot of fighting that happens in this show, and most of the time, the fighting looks excellent. That first battle in episode 1, and also the Goblin adventure, that was all animated fantastically. They do a lot of interesting kind of like CGI backgrounds with the 2D animation on top, because Luffy can fly, and there's a lot of flying scenes that they do like some 3D animation techniques with CGI backgrounds, which I think look pretty good overall. I think that's a great way to use CGI as backgrounds instead of as characters. There are some times where it does drop pretty substantially in quality, but overall the animation is pretty good. The music overall is pretty great as well. The opening absolutely slaps. The ending is pretty alright too. Not really my cup of tea, but it's not bad music, but the opening absolutely slaps. That is a great opening. So the show does have merits, and I do think there are things to be enjoyed here. I've certainly enjoyed the 6 episodes that I've watched so far. I'm looking forward to finishing out this series and seeing what else we find out about what's going on. There's a lot of uniqueness to it that definitely elevates it above, the Isekai slop that does exist out there. But the bottom line for me, as an Overlord content creator going into this show and watching A Wild Last Boss Appeared, while there are a lot of similar aspects of the show, such as, similar characters and similar, kind of setup, the plots and the vibes and the mentalities of our there's just too big of a divide there to say that this show is like an Overlord clone or anything. The whole story just is not about conquering the world. It doesn't have to do with that. This is exploring the aftermath of world conquest. Truthfully, as far as anime that are like Overlord that I've covered, I think Apocalypse Bringer Minogira is a lot more similar to Overlord than A Wild Last Boss Appeared is, once you actually get down to the details. That being said, this show definitely has enough going for it to elevate it as an isekai anime. It has enough to stand on its own 2 feet, in my opinion. I definitely think it deserves more attention than what it's been getting this season. I think it's one of the better anime I've seen this season. Granted, this season overall I think has been pretty weak, but this is still, I would say, one of the better ones I've watched. It's got enough plot hooks to keep you interested. It has a deeper layers to it. It has good animation. It has a pretty solid soundtrack. It even has like comedy and things like that. And there are a lot of things to enjoy in this show, I believe. I definitely think if you haven't, you should check out A Wild Last Boss Appeared. What did you guys think of this show? Maybe you had a vastly different perspective than me. As a Overlord clone, people are accusing it of being, which I don't really find it to be, but maybe you guys do. Maybe you have different thoughts on the aspects of it. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I love to hear from you all. If you enjoyed this video and you want to see another one like it, please, you have to hit that like button to let me know. And if you aren't already, please subscribe to the channel. It does help me out more than you know, and it'll let you know when I post in the future. With that being said, I want to thank you all for watching to the very end of the video, and I will see you all next time. Bye.